We continue to follow developing news from Afghanistan. The Canadian military has announced the deaths of 5 Canadians there. Here's the CBC's James Murray in Kandahar.
Well, this will certainly go down as one of the darkest days in recent memory for the Canadian contingent here in southern Afghanistan. Many lives were lost today. 4 Canadian soldiers were killed on the roads of southern Afghanistan, and 1 Canadian journalist has died as well. Brigadier General Daniel Ménard made the announcement tonight at the Kandahar airfield, and here's what he had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday Canada lost 5 citizens. 4 soldiers and 1 journalist were killed as a result of an improvised explosive device attack on their armored vehicle during a community patrol in Kandahar City at approximately 4 p.m. Kandahar time. We are in the process of connecting the next of kin of soldiers, and we will provide more information once this has been completed. 1 Canadian civilian official was injured, and their next of kin has been notified. The soldiers were conducting a community security patrol in order to gather information on the pattern of life and maintain security in the area. The journalist was traveling with them to tell the story of what Canada's soldiers are doing in Afghanistan. On behalf of all the soldiers, airmen, sailors, and special operators of Joint Task Force Afghanistan, I offer our sincere condolences to the families and friends of our fallen.
With so many Canadians involved and so many families to be notified, it's difficult to get a hold of people over the holiday season, one supposes. The Canadian military has decided at this moment not to release any of the names of the people involved in this blast. We can tell you one of the names, though, a journalist, the first Canadian journalist to die under the embedded process here in southern Afghanistan. Michelle Lang worked with the Calgary Herald and filed to the CanWest chain of newspapers in Canada. She'd been in Afghanistan for just a few weeks, and she had spent a lot of that time in the field bravely going and putting on a helmet and body armor and going where the Canadian soldiers go, seeing what they did, giving a first-hand account of the Canadian mission in southern Afghanistan. And reporting in that way has cost her life. She was in a light armored vehicle when the IED blast went off. She died when Canadian soldiers died as well, and she will be greatly missed.
That's the CBC's James Murray in Kandahar. Now, former CBC correspondent Brian Stewart has covered the mission in Afghanistan since it began, and he joins us now. Brian, the attack happened not far from Kandahar in the Panjwai district. How concerning is this?
It's very concerning, of course, and I gather from the sketchy reports now it occurred around the Dan district, which is almost a suburb of Kandahar City. And this was a district held out by Canada as something of a model, actually, of successful community security actions, and had been thought to be relatively stable. This merely underscores the fact that these attacks can happen anywhere in Kandahar, anywhere in the south of Afghanistan. The explosives themselves are so powerful now, they can cause multiple casualties when they occur like this. And it's very hard at this stage to tell whether it was a lucky hit by the Taliban or whether this was a long-planned, patient operation. But it does underscore, too, the fact that in a counterinsurgency war, which is what this has become more and more, troops are expected to be out patrolling more amongst the population more. This will inevitably increase the risks to Canadian troops, to American troops, to, in fact, all the Allied troops that are operating in the explosive south of Afghanistan.
Why is this district so important to the Taliban to control?
Well, the Taliban's chief objective in Kandahar, which is one of their chief objectives as a province, is Kandahar City. Kandahar City was the birthplace of the Taliban movement. Many of its leaders, many of its fighters come from Kandahar City. It's also a strategic location because the main highway of the country runs down and around through it. And in every respect, it is seen as a major moral moral, strategic, tactical objective for the Taliban. In fact, Canada has been somewhat criticized in the past, not because of any lack of fighting intensity or skill, but because their numbers were so short that, in fact, it hasn't perhaps guarded the area around Kandahar city as much as it should. Now there are more American troops in there joining with the Canadians, and they're on more offensive operations, perhaps like the one we saw today.
Now, Canadian Forces counterinsurgency involves being out on the ground among the people. Is this proving to be a dangerous tactic for them?
It's always dangerous, but it's hard to see how else you can wage a counterinsurgency war, because unless you're with the population will be basically under the influence, under the threat of the guerrillas, of the insurgents themselves. So there really is no way to successfully wage this kind of war without getting out into the countryside to some extent, particularly in those areas that are populated, the suburbs around major cities. The Allies have been very, very lucky or skillful so far in keeping the Taliban out of the cities. The war could become very much nastier, very much more visible, and very much more horrible in every sense if, in fact, the insurgents get their way into cities and carry on the fight inside urban areas.